What's up, my friend? Abby here, and welcome back to Writer's Life Wednesdays, where we come together to help you make your story matter and make your author dreams come true. Today we are talking about the inciting incident, what it is, what a lot of writers think it is, but it's actually not, and how to write an amazing inciting incident that sucks readers into your story and holds their attention for the rest of the ride. This is the second video in a series that I'm doing breaking down the 3-act story structure. We're breaking down each story beat in depth, plus debunking a bunch of common writing myths about these plot points, and also learning from real story examples. So if you missed last week's video, go watch that. It was all about writing the hook. So the hook is the very first story beat in the 3-act story structure. It's what pulls a total stranger into your story and makes them want to know what happens next. So obviously you have to have a gripping hook on page 1, or else your reader might not ever make it to the inciting incident. You get me? Okay, so if you already watched that video and you figured out your hook and you're ready for the next step, awesome. That's what this video is all about today. The inciting incident, the call to adventure, whatever you want to call it, basically when your story really begins.
Why does your story matter? Good question. What if I told you that there's a science behind every great story? I don't just teach you how to write. I teach you how to change the world with your story and make your author dreams come true.
Okay, so the inciting incident is such a big topic. I actually want to make 2 videos out of this story beat. So this video is going to be breaking down the actual formula for a riveting inciting incident. And then next week's video, we're going to be looking at some story examples and case studying them like we do. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at how most writers describe the inciting incident. So I just Googled what is an inciting incident, and here's a few of the results that came up. Inciting incident. Definition: interrupts the peace and balance of the situation, and one or more of the characters comes into conflict with an outside force, himself or another character. Questions to ask yourself: what is the first important thing that pulls you into the story? Important thing? Important to who? Me? The character? The world? The government? Who is it important to, and why is it important? This is such a vague question, it honestly hurts my brain. The inciting incident is how you get characters to do something. It's the doorway through which they can't return, you know. The story takes care of the rest. What? The story takes care of the rest? I have never met a story that took care of the rest for me. And why do we need to just get the character to do something? Do what? Why? Why does it matter to them? Why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to anyone? Okay, one more. Inciting incident. When the conflict is introduced. The inciting incident sets the plot in motion. Example: Justin injures himself. Well, that sounds riveting. And the inciting incident sets more than just the plot in motion. It's the beginning of your protagonist's roller coaster of a character arc. Okay, so we kind of need to pause for a minute here and talk about character arcs, character transformation, character development, all that. Because that's part of your story structure, okay? It's like half of everything. You have what happens, but you also need why it matters. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know my favorite phrase. Come on, say it with me. Story is not about what happens, it's about how what happens affects and transforms the characters. That transformation is also known as your character arcs. Here's a line graph of what the positive character arc looks like, lined up with the 3-act story structure. I'm going to show you a few things about this, but first I just want to clarify, when I say positive character arc, I'm talking about your protagonist's character arc, okay? Not your villain or your anti-hero or any kind of morally gray character. I'm talking about a positive role model character that your readers will root for and emulate. Now, when I say role model, you might be thinking that I'm about to suggest you make your protagonist a role model throughout the entire story, just a cherub from beginning to end. No, not only would that be stupidly unrealistic and unrelatable, but it would defeat the whole purpose of the character transformation that we just talked about. A character who is already enlightened can't have an aha moment, and therefore can't deliver a powerful message to your reader. That's what a character arc is for. So let's go back to the line graph. First off, positive and negative signifies basically how okay or not okay your protagonist is. So if things are positive, she's fine. If things are negative, she's screwed. The middle of the road here is a conflicted state, the place where your character is forced to make uncomfortable decisions and grapple with their misbelief. So at the beginning of your story, your protagonist is a conflicted person. That's why I placed their starting point here on the line chart, just north of the conflicted state. They're probably a good person at heart, but they have some serious issues and false beliefs. AKA, they're primed to make a fear-based decision when something goes sideways, and something is definitely about to go sideways, okay? That's what you're setting up with your inciting incident. So just remember, when you look at this line slowly declining throughout the timeline of your story, it's not that your protagonist is becoming a bad person necessarily. It's just that as the story progresses, they're getting themselves in deeper trouble. Why? Because they have a deeply rooted fear and misbelief that's been hidden in their psyche for a long time, and until they have their aha moment, they're making all of their decisions based on this misbelief. At the beginning of your story, your protagonist hasn't left their comfort zone. They've lived some life, but life has a way of building up walls around you with fear, and that's why we don't step outside of our comfort zone, because we are essentially afraid of what lies outside our comfort zone. So what's going to push your protagonist outside their comfort zone and get the ball rolling? You guessed it, the inciting incident. It's also worth mentioning that the inciting incident shows up around the 12% to 15% mark in your story. Although I like to always cut that number in half and make the inciting incident happen around like the 6% mark or as soon as possible, because we live in an age with microwaves and elevators and the internet, okay? We don't have long attention spans anymore. So here is the description of this story beat taken from my 3-act story structure template, which by the way you can grab for free. There's a link in the description box below. Inciting incident. Protagonist is pushed outside comfort zone. This is the event that really sets your story in motion. Your inciting incident doesn't have to be some big, epic, crazy call to adventure. It just has to be something that pushes your protagonist outside their comfort zone. A conflict surfaces, something the protagonist has to face head on. It's really as simple as that. Don't overcomplicate it, as many writers do. If you know why the inciting incident matters to the protagonist and you let them react to it as a normal person would, running for cover because of their fear, congratulations, you nailed it. Prompt. Ask yourself, why does this inciting incident matter to my protagonist? How does it push her outside her comfort zone? And there's like a little mini story beat right after the inciting incident called the build-up, and it's kind of part of the inciting incident, so I'm gonna read that one too. The build-up. Facing the consequences. Protagonist is going to have to face this thing head on. The reader can now see what the protagonist's internal struggle really is and how this whole situation is going to be especially tricky for her to navigate. Prompt. Ask yourself, what internal conflict is going to arise for my protagonist in wake of the inciting incident? Right away, do you see how this is different? Even just using the term comfort zone instead of the door. A character being pushed through a door, or point of no return, is virtually meaningless because we don't know what the door means to them. It's just a door. It's just a thing happening. But a character being pushed outside their comfort zone, that has some meaning, that has some significance because there's context. That involves fear and the possibility of pain, two things that all humans instinctively try to avoid, so our brains just love to pick up a book and watch someone else experience fear and pain. Not just because we can go on an adventure without ever leaving our couch, but also to help us learn from this character's experience and avoid possible threats in our real world. This is why story originated. Would you be surprised if I told you that story was not invented as an entertainment device? It wasn't, I'm serious. It was invented to have meaning, a specific meaning that matters to us because of the lesson or the message that it teaches. Back in the day, All story was non-fiction, an account of real, true events handed down from generation to generation, designed to help us navigate this world we live in and avoid as much pain and danger as possible. Our brains are built to avoid pain, so when we're faced with a choice of pain versus pain, we're always going to choose the less painful option. We're gonna dig into this more when we talk about the first plot point, so that's coming soon, but I wanted to bring it up in this video because it's also important to remember when you're writing the inciting incident. I like to call this the impossible choice. If the hook was the setup for the inciting incident is the setup for the impossible choice, which is the setup for the first plot point. The impossible choice is how your brain reacts to leaving the comfort zone. Basically, your protagonist's brain is screaming, I just got shoved outside my comfort zone. I'm scared. I can either continue into unknown territory and maybe get everything I ever wanted, or I can retreat back into the shadows and experience the pain of not getting the thing I want. That's the impossible choice. And it has to be a choice, because otherwise your protagonist is just a punching bag for the plot, and the plot is just beating them up however it wants to. And then in that case, there's literally no intrigue for the reader because there's no agonizing decision that has to be made by the protagonist. The choice is what creates intrigue. If there's no choice, then there's no unanswered question. We know what's gonna happen next, so why do we need to read on? We don't. Curiosity is something that we all want our readers to feel, right? Well, curiosity comes from unanswered questions. What is clickbait? Unanswered questions, unfinished sentences. What happens next will bring you to tears, but you don't know what happens next, and you don't know if it will bring you to tears, and that's why you click on it. The human brain gets high on watching other people make decisions. Just think of all the game shows that force participants to make choices. Even real estate shows use this fundamental rule of psychology. Curiosity triggers the pleasure and reward systems in our brain. Neurons that fire together wire together, which means your brain is going through this cycle of question, curiosity, answer, reward, dopamine, question, curiosity, rinse, repeat, triggering the pleasure centers in their brain until their associative memory kicks in and tells them, you're enjoying this book a lot. You should keep reading this book. You should stay up all night and read this book. Yes, the inciting incident can smack your protagonist around a bit, but they need to be an opponent, not a punching bag. They need to have the ability to make this choice, okay? The plot can't just decide the choice for them. That's what I mean when I say that your characters have to be the agents of change. They can't just spend the whole story absorbing what happens to them. Check out my video on character-driven stories versus plot-driven stories for a better explanation on that. Okay, so let's recap what we learned about the inciting incident today. The inciting incident isn't just the first big thing that happens, rather it's the external event that pushes your protagonist outside their comfort zone. Knowing the protagonist and understanding her comfort zone is the only thing that makes us see the importance of the inciting incident. Because you've already introduced us to the protagonist's internal conflict in the hook, the reader can now see how this whole situation is going to be especially painful for her to navigate. The impossible choice is what piques our curiosity and keeps us reading. If you don't give your protagonist a choice to make and show us why this choice is so important to them, your protagonist becomes a punching bag for the plot, and your story becomes predictable. Remember, your protagonist's misbelief has been quietly growing stronger for a long time now, which means when something pushes her outside her comfort zone, she's primed to make a decision based on that misbelief. Ask yourself, why does this inciting incident matter to my protagonist? How does it push her outside her comfort zone? What internal conflict is going to arise for my protagonist in wake of the inciting incident? What is the impossible choice? Your protagonist must be faced with options: stay inside their comfort zone and risk never getting what they desire, or venture into the unknown and accomplish their goal while still avoiding their fear. So boom, that's it for this story beat. Stick around because next week we're going to be doing a case study on the inciting incident. I'm going to show you examples of what the inciting incident looks like in real stories, a good example and a bad example. Plus, we're also going to look at a story where seemingly nothing is happening and there's no real adventure to be called to, and what the inciting incident looks like then. It's gonna be a fun video, and if you're from the future, the link will be right here. Make sure you grab the 3-act story structure template. It is linked in the description box below. You can download it for free, and it also includes all of the prompts and questions to ask yourself about your story. Smash that like button if you liked this video, and be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I post writing videos and publishing videos every single Wednesday, and I would love to have you here in the community. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, because that's where we go beyond videos and take storytelling to the next level. The Patreon community is not only the best way to support what I'm doing here on YouTube, but it's also the only way to connect personally with me and get better guidance on your story. So go to patreon.com/AbbyEmmons and check out all the awesome extra exclusive content that I have over there for you. Until next week, my friend, rock on. Can you see that clock? You're gonna be like, wow, Abby, it takes you a long time to make a video. I'm like losing my voice already. I don't understand. And I also don't understand why there's like this weird freaking sunbeam on my face. What is that from? My phone? Rock on! I'm laughing.